Hello everyone, I'm Anuradha. So this is my first channel. I have chosen to publish Edmond Kombat. He's my cohort member. He's my batchmate. He's from Ghana. I'm happy to publish him first because he was the first person I recorded. Let me brief you about him before we get to listen to him. Is a founder of Oyster Agribusiness and City Energy, companies that focuses on urban clean energy and farmers who have small land holdings. He is a co-founder and policy director at the Institute of Energy Security, a think tank advocating energy efficiency in Ghana. He established the Edcom group of companies. He is a lawyer by profession and is certified in securities trading. He holds a degree in political science and presently a candidate of mid-career masters in public administration in Harvard Kennedy School. These are the achievements of Edmond Kombat. Now we'll listen to his past that will tell us how he reached here.
Thank you very much. So my name is Edmond Kombat. I was born in Tamale, which is the northern region of Ghana, but my parents hailed from the northeast region of the country. It's one of the poorest places in the country, specifically in a place called Bunkrugu. So I was born in Tamale, raised up for a while, attended kindergarten in a small school called Our Lady of Fatima. After a short while, one day I came from school with my football, and I came and met my father and my mother packing, and I asked what was happening, and they said that we're going back to the village. And I didn't understand by that time. I had never been to the village before. Then we were packed, we went to the public transport, and then we took a bus home to a small mud house in a small town called Nakpio, just about 1 kilometer from the Bunkrugu main town. We entered a mud house and we were told that this was our house. So I started asking questions that what has happened? Why are we here? And my mother told me that my father had to resign from his work because of issues he had there. He couldn't continue to work again. And that was the turning point for my life. Relatively, I will say when we were in Tamale, basic things that I needed, like getting a football, going to school and having a bag, having shoes, I had at the time, because my father was working with the state government at the time. Ghana had state farms, and my father was one of the operators of the machines, a combined harvester. That was the work he was doing after middle school. And he was very proud of that, but events at work didn't allow him, and he had to forcefully go into retirement. And that kind of turned my universe. I got into this village, there was no electricity. I went there and realized that my father had another wife, so it was kind of a polygamous home. We're in a madhouse, no light. The village, there was a school there for which had only one teacher. It was roofed with mud. The ground was not, plastered, so like it was sandy and all of that. So I went to the school. I was put in class 1 in the school. I became a little wayward. I wasn't focused. I wasn't taking events seriously, and I kept asking my father why were things like this. And I could also see as a young child, I think around the age of 7 to 8 at the time, that the relationship between my father and my mother in terms of their marriage was deteriorating by the day. Then over a period of time, one day I came home and I saw my mother packing her things. So I had a younger sister called Sylvia, and she was like 3 years at the time. I was born in the late part of 1988, 21st December. So my mother was leaving the house. I tried to talk to her not to leave, and she was like she had to go. So literally, I was made to stay with my dad because I was around 7, 8 years at the time, and my mother had to take my sister away. It would take me close to 13 years before I see my mother again. So I stayed with my stepmom. I wasn't taking my academics seriously, and yet in class I was kind of performing in a way anytime they give us tests. So this sole teacher called Stone, who was in the school, one day called me and told me that I came back from the relatively a town or city to the village. I've seen the life that is here. I have a choice, either to continue the way I'm doing and end up the way I see people living in the village, or a town or city to the village. I've seen the life that is here. I have a choice, either to continue the way I'm doing and end up the way I see people living in the village, or I could turn that into positive anger and marry my books. That was the word that he used if I didn't want this kind of life.
This is the most important stage of his life, which acted as a turning point in Edmund's life. Because we all get advised at some point of our life, and not all of us take it seriously or in the right spirit. But if you see Edmund, if you listen to his story after this, it'll be very interesting what he does after listening to this teacher. The teacher who took special interest in Edmund and chose to spend some time with this small kid and tell him that he really can get out of this misery and reach great heights.
And that was the turning part in my life. My father also came from a polygamous home. My grandmother and my grandfather gave birth to 14 children. My father was one of them. There were 3 boys and 11 of them were girls. So, and my mother's side, my mother's mother also gave birth to 12 children. And there were 3 guys also, and the rest were females. So I had a lot of uncles and aunties from both sides, kind of an extended family, as it is evident across the African continent. But unfortunately, most of all of this, my relatives were also not wealthy. So despite the union, people seeing each other as family, they couldn't just help. And it was a difficult time for us growing up. So I took my academics seriously, and went through primary school. I was the school prefect for the school. Then from there I had to go to JHS. So I used to walk from the small village of Napiok to Bumprugu, which is 1 kilometer every day, in and out, to attend junior high school. And it was difficult. And all of this time, even in the Bumprugu township, which is now a district capital, there was no electricity. So we were learning with lanterns. That was how we studied, individually and in groups. I became the general prefect for the school, and then I completed BEC. I was the best student for that school in that year. But after completing, at the time, we needed some small amount of money for my father to buy basic things for me to go to high school, and there was no money. His pension was as meager as anything, because if you go on voluntary retirement, then literally you're not getting anything. So it was a very difficult period. But he managed and for me to go to high school, and I went to Nalerigu Senior High School, which is also now a regional capital, but at the time it wasn't developed. But it was in high school I started experiencing electricity. And it was actually in high school I actually married my books. So I saw that the only way for me to get out of poverty and turn my family fortunes around was through education. That was the only thing, that was what I understood. So I remember in high school, my friends used to laugh at me. I could actually literally memorize an entire exercise book of notes I've written word for word, because this was a war I was fighting against poverty, and the only way I could win this war, in my understanding, was through education. And from that period, I saw the struggles my father was going through. I could not meet my mother at the time. I saw where we came from. So I decided that I was going to, on my own, do things to assist my dad. So I had one of my aunties, which I mentioned, who was in down south, married. So usually vacation, I go there to assist them in their farms, and then be able to get something to assist myself in high school. So that was what I did. And usually, because of the poverty in the Northeast region, and specifically where I came from, the idea was always that when you go to school and you are done, you should go to, after high school, you should go to training college or go to nurses training college. And the reason was that if you went to nurses training college or training college, you were given some allowance monthly, because the government of Ghana had this idea to encourage people to go into the teaching and nursing profession. So that place, you could get allowance and all of that. So I didn't want to go there, because I don't think that those things aligned with what I wanted to do. So I wanted to go to university straight away, because I had seen a number of people who chose that path, and it was just management. They couldn't really transform their families. But I also knew that if I wanted to go to university, my parents could not afford. So as I went down south during vacations in high school to assist my auntie to be able to make something, I started creating the paths through which, after finishing high school, I could actually work to do something substantial to help my dad pay my fees, because I knew that if I had some income, I could bargain. But if I didn't have anything to bring on the table, I was going to be forced to go to training college or nurses training college. So it was difficult. I was plotting this. My father used to visit me in the school. Then I became the school prefect. I was the part of the debate society and joined quizzes and was doing quite well. But things were difficult, very, very difficult, Then we finished the high school. This was in 2008. And when we finished high school, I was the best student again in the school. And this reason was just because of the word Stone had given me, and that is one thing I've realized, that like our words, especially to youngsters, matters. And sometimes it will come from someone, sometimes it will come from a parent or a brother or an uncle or a teacher. Sometimes it has to come from us. We have to find a way to generate things to steady our environment and find a way to encourage ourselves. But this word Stone gave me kept me going, and I'm still in touch with him, and he appears to be kind of proud of what has happened. So we finished high school. I passed my WASI exams, and it's an exam that is written by West African Anglophone countries, so Ghana, Nigeria, and the rest. So I was again the best in my high school. But by the time the results came, I was down south working. So I started in farms, and then along the way, I got a lady who wanted someone to help teach her student extra classes. So I went and was teaching them extra classes. And one day she came and said that, you know what, I have a brother who has a private school in Accra, which is our country's capital. And this my brother needs a teacher, and I feel that you are too good, and I want to recommend you. Will you want to go? I had never been to the regional capital before. And that was how I ended up going to Accra. So I got to Accra in October 2008, and when I got there, I realized that the town was actually a little bit outside Accra, called Onyansana, but I went there anyway. And when I went there, I realized they had issues. The school was not organized as it was presented, but as fate will have it, it was just a way of me being shepherded into maybe my future. Then I got another school in another town called Amasaman, and I went there and started teaching. And at the time, they were paying me 80 Ghana cedis, which was the equivalent at the time of, let's say, maybe around $40 or so per month. So that was what I was saving. I was literally not eating. So I saved this amount of money over the period. And then the friends I met in that school, one of them knew someone who was in the University of Ghana, and spoke to him that, oh, his friend wants to apply. The guy helped me, and I applied to University of Ghana. And that was the only school I applied. My parents were asking, my father was asking me, have I applied to training college? I didn't answer. Nurses, I didn't answer. And I saw he was worried because his son has passed. And, he has to find money. And there was none. We only had one cattle in the village at the time. So, when the admission letter came, I actually got the University of Ghana. So when I got it, it also came with the fees. And thankfully, what I had saved was almost half of the fees that was required. So I called my dad and I told him. And when I told him that I had about half of the fees, it was like a burden that had lifted off him. He was so happy, he didn't know where to hide himself. And I remember when I took the decision to go down south to work, he wasn't happy about it. But he was very excited after, the results that came. Then he actually took a pension. He actually took a loan from the pension that he was taking, because he could take some small amount of money. And then he sold the single cattle that was left in the house. And when I was growing up, I was the one taking care of that cattle. I used to tend after the cattle and all of that, not knowing that this cattle. And I was actually very sad when the cattle was sold, because I'd developed some friendship with the cattle. In our language, the cattle was called Jamwan, which is like a red man, so the cattle was red. And so my father added the money, and I went to the University of Ghana. We paid the first year school fees. I didn't know how the second year was going to happen, where money was going to happen, but come from. But as fate will have it, things just, took off. Opportunities came, some aunties came along the way. And by this time, I had visited my mom. I had seen her, I'd spoken to her, I remember her crying, seeing me, because he was in a totally different town. And we remarried, and that marriage wasn't going well as well. And it was kind of sad when I met him, sad and happiness, So I was in the University of Ghana, and then I'm someone who don't like injustice. I've always fought against injustice. I've always fought against oppression. And I felt that the university administration and the government at the time were doing things that were not in the interest of students. So I joined the student movement, and we were advocating for justice, equality, reduction of school fees, timely disbursement of student loans, and to stop arbitrary increases of school fees, as it was the norm of the day. Then along the way, my colleagues felt that I could be president of the student body, and they joined forces, and it was one of the best campaigns in the school. Then I became the president of the student council. So this is the struggle that I went through, and through these events, I found myself at the university. Then from there, by the time I was finishing, I was also active. I got the opportunity to do an internship with the Bank of America Merrill Lynch in London, and it came with some allowance. That was decent, that could help me, and I could send some home. And then there was also another opportunity for me to go and work, to come here to Connecticut, to the US here, on a US government exchange program for young upcoming students through the US State Department. But I declined this one and went to London because the London one was giving me allowance. So it was a great time. It was 3 months. I learned a little about investment banking, how it works and other things. And for me, it was 2 different worlds, because I looked at my village, no electricity, small, tiny, muddy place. And I looked at where I was at the city in London. And this were the height of capitalism, where the people were deciding on people's destinies in terms they were doing trading, trading corporate and sovereign bonds, market making, forex, and it was 2 different worlds. And I could see, I was like, wow, so people could be in this state and people could be in this state, and how each of them live like not knowing the other existed. So I asked myself, what can I do to be able to bridge the gap or help my people, because of where I was coming from? Because I believe that as we now learned from Harvard Kennedy School here, that I carry a bit of the hopes and aspirations of people like me, and their voices are part of my life, and I need to help them, in any way that I can. So I went back to Ghana, did my mandatory national service, which is required of every student who graduates from Ghana. And then through that, I was like, what can I do to improve people's life, to increase people's incomes? One was, okay, maybe I could go to law school and then make sure that I give effective representations to people. But aside that, I could also go into venture into entrepreneurship. So I looked around, and what could I do? The first was to start a fund management firm, which didn't go too well. Then I went into agriculture, which was something that I think I understood well growing up, because I grew up, as I told you, in a subsistence farming community. And through that, Oyster Agribusiness was born. And we've been able to support a lot of farmers since 2018 for about 3,000 farmers. This year, we are looking at increasing the number to 4,500. So it's been difficult, but along the way, I still realized that the knowledge networks and experience I had gathered were not enough. They were kind of localized. So there was the need for me to up my game in terms of further learning and get globally connected, to open my horizon. Because as I read and became aware of my community, my continent, and my world, I realized that the kind of environment I grew up in was not only peculiar or unique to that of Ghana and Africa, but it was actually across the world. Same in Asia, similar in Latin America, and then in Eastern Europe, and so I asked myself that, okay, it's good for me to go further, learn, and also understand from other people's perspectives, and that was how I decided to apply to Harvard Kennedy School. And once again, looking at this background I've given you, I shouldn't be here. I didn't feel that I qualified enough, but I said that, okay, let me give it a try. What is the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is that they will say that we are sorry, we could not admit you. But the best that can happen is also that I will be able to break the glass, crash the glass, and then, and motivate people like me that your background doesn't matter if you are committed, if you're hardworking, and if you are prayerful. In my case, you combine all of this and you give life your best, things can happen. So I applied, and thankfully I got admitted. And coming here has been amazing. I've met incredible people across the continent whose similar stories are similar to me. Other stories are totally different from a different angle. I've met people from India, I've met people from Pakistan, Bangladesh, I've met people from China, I've met people from the US here, I've met people from Australia, from Bhutan, I've met people from Iraq, Afghanistan, in the Middle East, in Europe, and across the African continent. And it's been an amazing time, as I hear colleagues share their stories, minorities, what they go through, and others, how people are treated and all of that. And it's been an incredible experience, and I've learned so much that whatever I thought I knew has been kind of more than doubled, and it's further inspired me to do better, to encourage people like me that, look, you should never give up, no matter where you're born, whether you're born in a broken home, how you look. You should never let it be a constraint on you. Rather see it as a challenge and a call to duty for you to fight. And I want to encourage all young people that, look, in this life, nothing is impossible if you put your mind to it. You can do it. You have been called to do it in such a time as this. Let's hope. Let hope keep fire burning in your heart. Do not give up. Maybe through you, more people like you can be liberated. They can be liberated in terms of education, in terms of financial needs, in terms of peace in the world. You don't know, but you carry a certain huge light inside of you. Don't let anyone dim that light. Let that light, shine. And through that light, the world may be a better place. So, one of the things I've been asking myself is, and I just have about a week to leave the famous Harvard Kennedy School. And, the mantra of the school is that ask what you can do. And the question has been that, what can I do going forward? And, in growing up, one of the people that I listened to their speeches and followed, on YouTube and other things, even though they were not around on this planet, was JFK. And his story has been a story of inspiration, of hope, of we can do it spirit. And one of the things that I've decided to do is to go back to Ghana in Africa to see how I can use all the resources and the networks and the talent, the energies that I've gathered here to better the lives of my people. That can be done through the entrepreneurship, which I'm currently doing, employing young people, creating opportunities for farmers, who have been disadvantaged and looked over, over the years, creating market for their goods, increasing their incomes. And one of the things that I've also decided to do is to focus on clean energy, especially solar and wind, and run water, where you can do small megawatts of electricity for people living in villages like mine, where the government says it's expensive to send electricity to them. And there are 750 million of them in Africa, across Africa, and the farming to similar number. So I'm looking at how to scale these two things across the continent to benefit people like me, because I believe that I have the platform and the experience and network to be able to do that. And also, who knows, one of the things that you get to see that you can actually do to affect the lives of people is through public service. So at the end of the day, I'm also looking at the day where I may run for office. I may run for office, to see how I can use that platform. And one of our lecturers was saying that one of the reasons why public service is important is that, for example, you can be an entrepreneur and you can become a Bill Gates and you can have $100 billion. But $100 billion is just an individual's money, right? Government can spend $100 billion in a week. So, the public sector is very important. And the public sector needs talented people, committed and passionate people like us who can, enter there to effect change. So instead of all of us sitting on the fence and not wanting to be offended, not wanting to be stressed, because it's difficult. We all have to, be in the arena. We all have to be in the play, to see what we can do in the public service to help. So that is one of the things on the table for me that I'm considering. There have been a few calls from people who grew up with me, from people from my community, from friends that I met across the university who kept asking me that, look, we feel that you can contribute your quota. And it is something that I'm considering very seriously, and in the not too distant future, I will publicly announce what I intend to do in terms of that.
hope you all enjoyed listening to Edmond Kombat. It definitely is an incredible life story. Next week, I'm planning to publish Manasseh Azuriawuni. He also happens to be from Ghana. He's an investigative journalist. Please wait for it. I'm publishing him next week. Thank you. Thank you.